Right now, there are families on Oahu's North Shore who have lost everything, and thousands of people who desperately want to help but have no idea where to start. The problem really isn't a lack of compassion, because that is definitely there. It's that the information gets scattered across social media feeds and unverified GoFundMe pages, and by the time you actually find the correct info, it's usually probably already out of date. In today's episode, you'll discover how one woman took matters into her own hands and built a tool that is completely changing the way disaster relief works in Hawaii, and how you, whether on island or thousands of miles away, can actually make a real difference in a way that truly matters. Aloha and welcome to Hawaii's Best, your guide to the best of Hawaii. In the wake of the two devastating Kona low storms that hit the islands, and specifically the area of the North Shore of Oahu, there has been a lot of outpouring of support and care and compassion, but also there's been a lot of misinformation as well in how to tangibly help, especially for those of us who are trying to figure out how to simply support those who are in the trenches right now, dealing with the recovery effort. So today, I am just honored and stoked to have Star Dahl-Thurston, Miss Hawaii herself 2023, and founder of Malama Map. We're going to talk all about that. It's a community-built resource hub created in the wake of the devastating storms. So let's go ahead and let's talk story with Star from malamamap.org.
Let's talk story.
I think the biggest question a lot of people have right now, and just seeing all the news, all the headlines, the pictures, the devastation, and it's like, man, why you can't get a break? It feels like, just over these past 5-6 years. And I just want to pull back a little bit with you on Oahu. How are things from your perspective and the community's perspective?
Well, for full context too, I had created Malama Map as a resource, particularly for people like me who they work in an office, live in town. I'm not on the ground out in Wailua. So it's hard to say exactly how things are. It changes by the day, but really plugged in with my church and all of the resources out there. And so far, it looks like there has been such a move of support from community members, the state, and other nonprofits to help clean up all of the mud and devastation that the flooding had caused. And right now, people are starting to, I think, rebuild, take out things that had gotten damaged. And it's going to be a long haul effort, similarly to what we've seen in Lahaina, that there's going to be a lot of need for rebuilding. But the water is safe again for people to shower, brush their teeth, to drink, to cook with. And it's going to be an interesting, I think, journey to see how it all plays out and how the state can really support the people who need that resource the best.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about Malama Map a bit more, because I think that seems like a tangible way for people on and off island to help. What are some of the best ways that someone who is not in Hawaii can help right now?
There's a lot of nonprofits and a lot of individual community efforts being made to gather resources, right? But previously, before Malama Map, it was really just on social media, Instagram, Facebook, these types of things, or GoFundMe efforts. And so Malama Map is basically a resource consolidation directory where if you're not in Hawaii, there's actually a Give Financially tab that you can click. And there are different nonprofits that have listed their websites, how you can financially give, how they're applying those funds to relief efforts. And then there's actually a website called stormkokua.com, I believe. It could be .org. It's linked on the website. Essentially, the Maui Relief Initiative during the Lahaina fires started collecting stories and needs from families and verifying that those are true and backing them and their GoFundMe links. So Storm Kokua is essentially a easy to use, user-friendly website where you can see all families who were affected by the recent storms, the Kona low storms, but also Lahaina. You can read their story, you can see what their needs are, and then you can contribute directly to their GoFundMe page, which is backed by GoFundMe's 501c3. So you can see that it's verified and safe. You can actually choose which family that you'd like to contribute, if not to a whole bunch to just one. If you want to support state and nonprofit efforts, you can also go to the different ones that are listed there, like Hawaii Food Bank and Queens Medical Center, things like that, or different churches that are doing efforts.
That's important that things are vetted. I think I read a Hawaii News report that there was like a $200,000 fraud or something already that came out of this, which is just, I know we saw that in the Lahaina fire as well, but it's just so sad that that is out there. Someone who is listening right now has a huge heart and just like is wanting to do something. Just take that extra 5 seconds to make sure it's vetted. And anything I link up in this show notes, it'll be vetted, but even just do your own due diligence, for those listening. So those listening, a lot of people are visitors and they're dreaming about Hawaii, and spring break is here and summer is going to be here. And there's a lot of good intentions of people who are traveling to Oahu and want to help. Now, what's something that may seem helpful for someone coming and visiting, but actually too much help almost feels too overwhelming? Maybe you can speak into that a little bit.
Number one thing is not just driving up to the North Shore with efforts to help. I did actually hear of a couple who had just traveled here the day that the storms hit, or kind of alleviated, and they dropped off their bags at the hotel, didn't check in, and just drove to the North Shore and cleaned somebody's house all day. And that is just the heart of people. And I see it so purely, like we just all want to love on each other and give support where it's needed. But right now, as we begin to consolidate and really streamline our efforts, it's important that you're going up with a group. And there are many nonprofits who are coordinating those efforts. And many of them you can find on Malama Map. So that's something that is a resource there for you to get involved and see what the needs are, how you can pitch in without being like an independent kind of just even noise at that point. Because when there's no direction and no clarity, sometimes it can just be disruptive, and that's something that I really saw a need to create Malama Map in general, just to share information, because outdated information on Instagram is just noise and distraction. Not everything is updated in real time. So that's a solution that I tried to find with the website. And then also going forward, there's a big move in impact travel. When people come to Hawaii, there's been a lot of talk online and social media about people who visit feeling kind of strange about benefiting off of the land that was taken from Hawaiians and all these things. And local people really encourage visitors to get involved and give back, but there's not really a central place where you can find out the best ways to volunteer. So moving forward in the next build, as I don't want to take away anything from the North Shore needs. So right now, the website's going to stay what it looks like now. But eventually, there's going to be an opportunity for you to get involved with volunteering everywhere. So connecting local people, but also visitors to opportunities to volunteer with nonprofits to really malama, or to take care of the land and the people here.
That's awesome. Maybe you could just zoom out a little bit of how it works, how it benefits people who are wanting to help, how it benefits residents and local businesses.
So it was the weekend after the storms had really done the bulk of their devastation. And I was starting in a drop-off location and posting on social media how people can basically get involved. And, my entire feed was just inundated with resources, locations, supply stations, volunteer opportunities. And, we have big Instagram hubs of local creators that are reposting things and collaborating so that they can be a main point of resource information. But I thought, why don't we have something from the state or from a nonprofit that just consolidates all this information? And on top of that, needs are changing hourly. It's really hard because you're just left to one, the information that you're going to get is based completely on who you follow. So if you're not following the right people, you're not going to get the real need information. And then on the back end for creators, it takes a lot to update the graphic, to push out a new video, to post it, to make sure people see it on top of that. So the need really came from seeing that we don't have a central place where one person can go and get the information they need, where they can drop off what the need is, and then just go. And we're wasting so much time on social media, sometimes 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, just trying to figure out the best way to provide a resource when in that time we could have gotten the resource to the people that need it. The need was to create more efficiency around the way that people show up in disaster relief specifically, because nobody mobilizes like Hawaii. We have the spirit of aloha. Even people that visit, everybody just wants to give and love. And I think it's important to focus on the fact that the heart is to serve people. Like people's heart is really to love on each other. So how do we just streamline and make that process more efficient? So Malama Map is a community resource hub to connect people in need to the people who have the resources to fill that need.
I'm on the website right now, and it looks like people can post what they need. They can find skilled help. They can even add a listing, like if they're an organization, I'm assuming. Is that how that works?
It can be anybody, an individual or an organization, to create a listing. And essentially what that does is if you're an independent plumber or something like that, maybe you just do it on the side, you can offer your help that way in the skills tab. But then if you're an organization, you can put your Hawaii business license. We review it and approve it, and then you'll get a verification badge. Right now, verified businesses that are legal to operate in the state of Hawaii, they get a badge if they submit their information. And certified 501c3 nonprofits can also get that badge. So important too when it comes to financially giving, so you can see some clarity there. So I've just tried to create ways that it feels safe and integral while also keeping the center of this, the fact that it's managed by the community and for the community. But right when you go on the site, this is really the directory point. So it says, I need help. That's where you would click if you're the one in need of resources. You need somebody who's got skilled labor. You need a supply station. You need medical aid. And then when it says, I want to help, that's where you click to see different opportunities to be a resource, whether that means financially, a donation drop-off site, volunteer requests. That's where those people would go. And then below that, where it says, I have skills. That's for our skilled laborers, electricians, plumbers, contractors, roofers, anything of that sort, which that need is really increasing as we begin to start to rebuild and see how we can support families that want to just get going on the rebuild.
Cool. Star, this is amazing. This is just kind of a grassroots thing, and it's cool seeing it spread, and it's just smart. I'm surprised there isn't these types of resources already out there. So way to go with that. Anything else that you would want people on island, or maybe those who are visiting, say this summer, for example, to know right now?
I think there are so many dynamics and emotions that run high in a situation like this. You know, in disaster relief, there's a lot of, hopelessness and desperation and anger and frustration and anxiety. And I think the heart of everybody here in Hawaii is to give people who need that resource and support. But sometimes that can get lost in translation. So I think if we have a little bit more grace for one another and approach things more with curiosity than with judgment, and really listen to one another, I think that'll streamline a lot of the efforts that are going on. And not to say that it's out of control, but like you said, with fraud cases, a lot of times, there's a lot of money in disaster relief. And unfortunately, some people like to take advantage of that. Even I heard about, as things washed up in the reservoir, that people were going and looting and stealing people's things, or homes that were left unattended. And it's just a really disgusting thing to see, but it's a small percentage of people. And I think if we use our discernment and we're aware, but at the same time, keep an open heart to people who really do want to serve and impact the community, especially visitors coming in, even in the summer. Hopefully by then we'll really have a resource there on Malama Map for people to see where they can volunteer. And organizations can even toggle on at this point in the build. That's not live yet, but they'll be able to say if it's visitor friendly or not. Not because we're keeping it close, but because there are sensitive areas that you don't want to invite people who are not from there. Because at the end of the day, this is not just a massive move to rebuild a park. These are people's homes that they've lived in for generations. And that's something that we want to continue to respect. Also in, forest restoration or invasive species removal, those are sometimes really protected areas. We want to maintain integrity and keep Hawaii, but also utilize resources that come our way. So we've got over 250,000 tourists on all of the islands any given day, any time of the year. That's so many people. Even just 1% of those people give the one afternoon of their vacation. That is so appreciated, and it can make a real difference.
Amazing. Star, thank you so much for your time, what you're doing. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
A huge mahalo to Star again for coming on today and sharing Malama Map with all of us. I think the biggest thing that came across for me, and I shared this with her when we weren't recording, was it was just so obvious to hear and see her heart into the creation of this tool. Malama Map is such a tangible, practical way for people to help. And I hope that this episode and this conversation gave you something real to actually do next. And it gave you a clear picture of how to show up for Hawaii in a way that truly does make a difference to the community. So if that is you and you want to help, and it probably is since you're listening all the way through this episode, you can go check out Malama Map at malamamap.org. hawaiisbest.org. I'll link it below in the show notes. Everything on there is vetted, up to date, so you can give your time, skills, resources with full confidence. And I know a lot of people do listen to this podcast who are on island, who live on Oahu. So if you do have those skills, or if you're a local business, be sure to check out Malama Map and how you can partner up with them. And if you found any value in this episode or any of the episodes that I have done on Hawaii's Best, I would just humbly ask for you to hit follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you don't miss what's coming next week. So until then, my friend, as always, live with aloha. Mahalo for listening to Hawaii's Best. If you found today's episode helpful, make sure to hit follow on your podcast app so you don't miss future episodes. You can find all links and resources mentioned today in the show notes below. Hawaii's Best is produced by Shorebreak Media Group, edited by Easy Podcast Solutions, and with music by our friends Stick Figure.